With this line of argument, masses of people could be arrested and incarcerated with no other justification.
Those who won't name names become suspects themselves. Neighbors turn against neighbors. No one is safe.
Informers were everywhere in those days. For example, there were the building supervisors called dvorniki. They were recruited by the NKVD and told to name 5 people from their block. If they could only give them 4 names, then they themselves became number 5.
In the dead of night at 4 a.m., the NKVD, Stalin's secret police, sweep the neighborhoods.
Being arrested was a relief. There was no need to tremble anymore. It was done. It was over.
This is the Lubyanka in Moscow, headquarters for the secret police. In its basement, a notorious prison, the scene of numerous torture sessions and executions. Both victim and interrogator remember.
That was the way the NKVD worked. First, you are locked up, and then they would always find a legal pretext. And if the law didn't exactly fit, they would squeeze your fingers in the door, knock out a few of your teeth. Most of the time, that would make you sign.
Yes, that happened quite a lot. If somebody didn't make the right statement, we would beat it out of him. Under physical pressure, he would confess crimes that he had never committed. You have to understand, I'm an interrogator. I cannot put my arm around your shoulder, compliment you, or have a nice chat. No, I have to get everything out of you that you are being accused of.
I told the interrogator, listen, I have done nothing, absolutely nothing. And he just answered tersely, I know, but it's cheaper for us to lock you up than to keep you under surveillance. Literally, that is what he said.
Whole sectors of society simply disappear. Stalin's infamous purges sweep the nation. All over the Soviet Union, like here in Kiev, mass graves are reminders of the horror.
Purge in Russian means chistka. Chistka is cleaning up. If you were going to clean the cupboard in your house, you would be performing a chistka. His chistka affected millions. In 1937 alone, over 900,000 people were arrested. And these were not all the people who were arrested. These were just party members who were arrested. Of them, 300,000 were shot outright. Just, after a 10 or 15-minute trial. They were just shot. These troikas would go around, the so-called troikas. They were made up of 3 field judges. And they would go from place to place, and you would bring somebody to the troika, and they would hear the charges, and the prisoner would say, I'm not guilty, and then they'd shoot him. It was as simple as this.
During a 2-year period, more than 1.5 million people are killed nationwide. Known as the Great Terror, it is a meticulously organized mass extermination. Former monasteries become preferred locations for murder. Even the smallest village must meet its quota.
Just like the production quota for timber, the quota for extermination was overfulfilled, especially among the country's elite. That was absolutely typical for Stalin's type of terror.
In Moscow, Stalin relaxes at the ballet. His favorite, Swan Lake. When the applause dies, he returns to his desk. It's a killer workload. He signs death warrants, often several thousand in a single night. Sometimes he finds the lists too short and adds a grim note like this: 6,000 more, no matter who.
Stalin would stay up late at night drawing up lists of people, whom to arrest, whom to execute. He himself was personally informed of how the interrogations would go. He himself personally gave the orders.
366 death lists, signed in red ink by Stalin himself. 44,000 names. Sometimes the dictator crosses out a name and spares a life. Those not executed are deported to the Gulag in Siberia, in cattle cars, under horrible conditions.
28 people were squeezed into each cattle car. We had nothing to drink, but they gave us salted fish. We were stupid enough to eat that because we could not imagine they would let us die of thirst. And we didn't have a toilet either.
Thousands of prisoners are transported to the camps daily. After 3 months and over 4,000 miles on the so-called death route, prisoner Peter Demont reached Siberia.
That's where we got out of the railroad cars. We stumbled and crawled, or rather fell out of the train. And of course, we were surrounded by armed guards who searched each and every car, so nobody could hide.
Prison warden Dantsik Baldaev recalls the horror.
As far as the extermination of human beings through labor was concerned, the administration of each camp and of the entire camp system was organized in an incredibly efficient way, like clockwork. The Gulag was a slavery institution like no other. Yes, that's the way it was. And you have to understand my position. I couldn't just say no and dodge the system.
Baldaev becomes the secret chronicler of the atrocities. These are the only authentic images from inside the Gulag.
It was a cannibalistic system. Literally, it devoured human beings. The life of the individual was worth nothing, absolutely nothing. The whole system was built on nothing but violence, blood, and a mountain of corpses.
In the fall of 1938, in October to be precise, we were 517 men. And in the spring of 1939, in the course of a single winter, that is, we were reduced to 22.
Here at the edge of the Arctic Circle, millions of convicts had to dig for gold in a gulag named Kolyma. Russians whisper, Kolyma значит śmierć. Kolyma means death.
It is a blood-curdling word, like nothing else. Like nothing else, it stands for suffering, misery, death, and human tragedy.
By its second year, the death rate in this gulag is nearly 100%.
They always transported as many prisoners to Kolyma as they needed. 100% of what the camp commanders requested was delivered, every year. For that reason, they did not mind masses of people freezing to death, or starving to death, or dying in other ways. They knew those who died were replaced.
As soon as they arrive in camp, prisoners are assigned to one of the various gold mines. Their quota? A staggering 100 carts of rock per shift per prisoner. Backbreaking labor to support Stalin's new industrial Russia.
If you stayed well below your quota, that is, if you delivered only 70, 80, 40, 50 cartloads per day, you were not allowed to return to the camp. You received only 7 ounces of bread, the punishment ration, plus half a herring. And then came the next shift, the night shift, and you were assigned to the night shift. And if you did not come up with your cartloads again, you had to stay out again and had to work a third shift.
And perhaps the greatest irony of all, thousands of prisoners write letters to Stalin, desperately seeking help from the very man who has ordered their imprisonment.
All our hope rested on Stalin. We really believed that all this happened without his knowledge. We were firmly convinced that he was a saint, the most holy one, the only one who could possibly save us. We all revered him and worshipped him like a god. Yes, we believed Stalin was the Almighty.
3 million prisoners will lose their lives in Kolyma. Yet somehow, Stalin remains above the death and deprivation he visits on his own people. It is a terrifying story of the power of myth.
Мы, женщины, помним и знаем, что нашей новой, счастливой жизни мы обязаны партии большевиков, партии Ленина, Сталина и герои героев, великому Антону Сталину.
Stalin was a master at manipulating and maintaining his public image. An image that remained untarnished by his ruthless behavior.
Stalin was a man of the people. Or that is to say, that is one face of Joseph Stalin, and that was one that he cultivated very, very carefully.
Stalin intuitively understood and seized every photo opportunity. These images of Gelia Markizova were captured in 1936.
Stalin as the best friend of children. Now this wasn't very familiar. But now there was an illustration to prove that Stalin loved children.
Stalin used this photo with Gelia to portray himself as the father of Russia. But Gelia's father, a party official from Siberia, would become a target.
My mother greeted me and said, "Papa has been arrested, but don't worry, he's not an enemy of the people. They'll soon release him."
Stalin's henchmen claimed the girl's father was a Japanese spy. He was executed by firing squad.
He didn't come back. So, that's how my happy life, my happy childhood came to an end.
Тебе нужна всесторонняя ориентация и всесторонний учет всех плюсов и всех минусов. Каким был Ленин?
In public appearances, Stalin carefully burnished that image of the benevolent patriarch, the calm and self-confident leader.
Чтобы они были так же правдивы и честны, каким был Ленин.
His speeches were recorded on gramophone records. They transported Stalin the man, his message, and the power of his myth to the most remote corners of the country. It was all a beautiful illusion.